Hello, this is Pastor Brian Anderson with another daily devotion, and we're doing this one on Thursday, July 27th, 2023. We are in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46, which is the famous teaching of Jesus on the sheep and the goats. And basically the big question from this passage is, what's going to happen when Jesus returns? Well, let's read Matthew 25, verses 31 to 33. But when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another, as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he'll put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. So far, it's pretty simple, right? Jesus comes back. He's going to sit on his glorious throne. Now, who sits on a glorious throne? A king does, a king of glory. So Jesus is returning as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And the very first thing he does when he returns is to separate all mankind into two different groups, the sheep and the goats. The sheep go on his right, the goats go on his left. And then he's got something to say to the sheep in verse 34. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed of my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." And he has something to say to the goats in verse 41. Then he'll say to those on his left, "Depart from me, accursed ones, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels." So I want you to notice the contrast between what Jesus says to the sheep and what Jesus says to the goats. To the sheep, he says, "Come." To the goats, he says, "Depart." To the sheep, he says, "You who are blessed of my Father." To the goats, he says, "You accursed ones." To the sheep, he says, "Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." To the goats, he says, "Depart into the eternal fire, which has been prepared for the devil and his angels." Now, what will prove on that final day whether a person was a sheep or a goat? According to Jesus, it's acts of mercy that were done for the brothers of Jesus, these brothers of mine. So acts like feeding the hungry, inviting the stranger in, clothing the naked, visiting the sick, visiting those in prison. So let's try to get a timeline. When Jesus returns, what happens? Well, he separates all mankind into two groups. He welcomes one group into his eternal kingdom, and he sentences the other group to eternal punishment. The one thing that is strikingly missing from this entire timeline is the 1,000 earthly reign year of Jesus Christ. We commonly call that the millennium. It's not here at all. According to Jesus, when he returns, all men are judged, all men are sentenced to either heaven or hell. There is no place in this timeline in Jesus' teaching for an earthly 1,000-year reign of Christ before the final judgment. The final judgment, according to this passage, happens when he returns. But the bigger idea, the bigger issue for us to think about in this passage is, am I a sheep or am I a goat? Does my life prove that I'm a sheep by acts of mercy that I do towards others? Do I have a heart of compassion for people that flows in acts of generosity to help others in their time of need? I pray that that would be the case. And if not, that I would repent and that God could use me to do his will here on the earth. And the same for you.